Coppins, and I'm on the Communications Committee, and we are sponsoring this forum with the help of Town Manager Anthony Wilson and Jay Bradshaw, who is actually now on the Communications Committee as well, and he's going to be the moderator for the forum. I especially want to thank our candidates for coming. For a select board, we have Michael Barrett and Dan Newman. Sarah Langette should be joining us momentarily. She's going to be the candidate for the school board, and Jason Stevens, who is the candidate for the road commissioner. Jay has some questions, but we also want to encourage participants to ask questions. Anthony's going to be monitoring those questions, and we'll forward them to Jay. And I'm going to turn it over to Jay, who's going to just kind of explain how the online forum will be conducted. And thanks again for joining us.
Great. Thanks, Gina. So we've done this almost every year, perhaps every year. Typically, we meet at the library or someplace and we can gather in person. And the idea is just to have an informal get-together where folks can meet the people who are running for elected offices. One of the many nice things about Belgrade is this isn't a Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green. This isn't any of that stuff. These are neighbors who are interested in serving our town and are here so that we can get to know them a little bit better. Some may be well-known, some perhaps not so much. In terms of asking questions, since there are very few of us, those that are on Facebook can send a message there, and Anthony will monitor that. If you are joining us via Zoom, you can use the chat feature and just click on there and type your message, and we'll make sure it gets asked. And I think we'll probably just open it up in general. I would ask that if you're not speaking, if you could please mute your microphone just in case there's any background noise. It just helps make it a little bit easier. One of the challenges with Zoom is if two people try to talk at the same time, it's like one cancels the other out, and it gets to be really hard. So background noise has become a real issue. So, Anthony, are you going to keep an eye on the waiting room for me? Excellent, thank you. Yeah, we've got a few people who are still clicking in, but we'll get going. Well, so just to get things started, I guess why don't we just go around and I'll do it alphabetically, just to say a couple words about yourself. I know Mike and Dan have both been on the board for a while, but maybe new to some folks. So, Mike, I'll start with you. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in running for re-election. And unmute yourself first so we can hear you.
It's better this way.
Thank you.
I drew the short straw. That's why I'm running again. But anyway, no, I've been on the board for, this is 2 complete terms, 6 years. And I enjoy serving the town. Town has faced some problems in the past. We have other problems, I'm sure, in the future. Some big, some small. And I enjoy doing what I can to help the town out. And that's really why I'm running again.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background, Mike.
Oh, well,
your professional background.
I used to work for the state of Maine. I've been in several departments. I started out with the Water Improvement Commission, which became DEP. From there, I went to Department of Conservation. My last employment with the state was with Fish and Wildlife. I went into the private sector and worked for a food distribution company, manufacturing company. Did that for a while and came back up here in the 90s. And since then I've done various things. I've been on several boards in town, including the trustees for the Library Appeals Board. I was instrumental on in working with the committee that looked at the streetscape for Main Street. Chaired that committee, as a matter of fact. And besides being on the select board, I am involved with the State Museum and the State Cultural Affairs Committee Council. That's it. I'm been married for 300 or 400 years, and That's about all I have to say.
You keep talking like that, there are not going to be many oatmeal cookies coming your way.
They might be. Fling them. She'll fling them in there.
They might be. Thanks, Mike. Dan, tell us about yourself.
Oh, I was on the board for, I believe it was 8 years. I took over after a year of another person serving, and they resigned. So I made it through almost 3 terms. Just got done because I just needed a change for a while. Went on to the budget committee. I'm also lieutenant on the fire department here in town. Basically what I've done, I also worked on the streetscape when they first started, when I was on the board. We were down there meeting when we were first setting up with the state on what they were going to do to rebuild the roads in the village and stuff. I've been working in fire protection, fire suppression systems for about 33 years. Back in 2001, I think it was, I actually started my own company, and about 3 years ago, I actually sold that company, and I now work for the company that bought me out. So now it's a little slower. Time to get back on the board. I miss being on the board and being around all the decision making of the town. When I was on the board, I tried to sit back and listen to everybody's opinion, and a lot of times if somebody asks me a question, it's going to take me a while to answer. I typically try to think it out. So I just, like I said, just miss being on the board again. And if we make it onto the board again, that's fine. If not, I'll serve in another capacity with the town.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Jason, there we go. Tell us about yourself.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hear me?
We hear you just fine, thanks.
Okay. So I have an excavation business in town. I've helped Morris for the last probably 18 to 20 years on the town work. He's gotten to the point where he can no longer do it, and felt as though I'd like to take over and do the town work for him, for you guys, for everybody. So lived here in town my whole life, worked construction my whole life, pretty much. Yeah.
Thanks. You all, I don't see Sarah on. Does anybody else? Anthony or no? Okay, if she joins us, we'll catch up with her in just a bit. Sarah Langett is running unopposed for the school board, so we'll talk to her if she's able to join us. I appreciate that you all took the time to answer the questionnaire that was in the newsletter, and I thought I'd just give you the opportunity to expand upon some of those questions, because again, the purpose of tonight's forum is just for us to understand a little bit about who you are and the things that you think are priorities. I'm interested in a little bit about your decision-making process, communications, that type of thing. So I guess this time I'll start with Dan and give Michael a break. But what do you see as the biggest challenges? You talked about balancing the needs and wants of the taxpayers with the reality of tax burden, and I'm just looking for your ideas on thoughts about how you might tackle some of those challenges.
Well, I mean, if you had asked me 3 months ago, it's probably going to be a different answer, because right now, I mean, with what we've got going on with COVID, there's a lot of things we'd like to do, and we just can't burden the taxpayers with it right now. I mean, long term in this town, we've got the problems with the salt contamination that we're going to have to deal with, which are going to be a fairly large tax burden to the public at some point. I mean, we've had plans in the works for years now for a central fire station. Again, that's may has to be pushed out farther. It's going to be a challenge once we get through this year to see just what kind of funding we have. So can't really give you a good answer on that at this point.
Yeah, you're good. That's a really good point. I mean, the rules of engagement changed dramatically St. Patrick's Day. None of us ever could have seen what was coming along. I was particularly interested your comment about finding a way to increase business expansion. So if we pretend that COVID isn't an issue, what are the types of things that you think a board of selectmen can do to help make Belgrade more welcoming for businesses?
Well, I know that the board and the town has been working on redoing the comprehensive plan. So, I mean, we really need to sit down and figure out an area that we want to try to have businesses come into without driving them down into the village or places that we don't want to make look more like the city. So, I mean, we've got to find ways to give businesses the opportunity to come into town to, let's see what I want to say. Not really sure how I want to say it. We need to find ways to encourage the businesses to come into town to help us increase our tax base without putting more burden on our services, which I don't know if that's going to be going out and finding certain businesses, that are more like repair shops or smaller retail stores. I don't really want to see larger retail stores come into Belgrade. I think one that would put more burden on our roads and everything else, but it also will change the landscape of the town. So I really don't have a plan set out at this point. It's just a matter of getting together with the board and figuring out how we can encourage certain industries. I know they just had somebody asked for permits for a solar farm. And now they want to go through the permit, the process of either coming up with an ordinance to try to make them fit in without overburdening the town on things like that. So, I mean, something like a solar farm may be a good tax revenue without impacting a lot of the town services, things like that. So.
Great, thank you. Mike, same question.
Dan hit it pretty much. I think the only thing I would suggest about what's happening, the climate changing, is it seems to change every 10 or 15 minutes lately since St. Patrick's Day. I mean, so much is happening so quickly. We've had to deal with things that I don't think the Selectboard ever thought they'd be involved with, like limiting the people that can come into the town office, for example. Requiring everybody to wear masks, never had to worry about that in the past, unless they were carrying a gun at the same time. But so it's been a quick change, and we've had to react quickly to a lot of things, and we've had to change things. You set something up, and then you find that it's not working. You have to change things. An example is opening up the Center for All Seasons, the limited opening of the Center for All Seasons, the limited opening of the library. These are potential hotspots because people gather there. So it was important to come up with a way of letting them have access without contaminating, spreading the contamination around town. As far as industries coming into town or businesses coming into town, we do need town. Dan's right. We do need businesses to increase the tax base. I think he would probably agree. We don't want businesses that are going to mess up the environment here. We have got a beautiful town, beautiful environment, beautiful lakes. We don't want something that's going to come in and mess that up. As far as how to attract them, that's a difficult one. Number one, the school is very important. The school system is very important. If you have a good school system, you're more likely to attract young families that come into town. And if you have more people coming to town, there's more need for service type businesses and retail type businesses. The small mom and pop stores, I don't mean to hold anybody out in particular, but like Days or Christie's, that's the kind of retail I think we need to have. They not only serve the purpose, they enhance the country feeling, if you will, of the town. Keeping up to date with the comprehensive plan, in changing it where necessary to keep up with the times, putting in ordinances that are will protect the town, protect the people. That's important without overburdening them. I mean, that's also difficult. We don't want to become a police state. On the other hand, we don't want things to go helter-skelter. Zoning is something that's not very popular in this town. I don't think I'd like to see that, but at the same time, we need to be thinking about where things are going to go and what would be good for the town. So that's about it as far as I can think of.
Well, one of the things that often comes up at budget time is that the overwhelming majority of our budget is not directly controlled by Belgrade. We've got the school budget takes a big chunk and the county takes a big chunk. So by the time we get down to it, sometimes there's really a wonderment as to what can the town do in setting its budget to try and to strike that balance of being fiscally prudent and appropriately progressive in the right areas. So I guess at the heart of my question is, tell me a bit about, I'm gonna start with Mike this time. Tell me a bit about how do you go about striking that balance? You know, what types of information do you try to collect to help you make that balance?
Well, you look at the previous years. Number one, that's the foundation probably of the budget. You look at what needs to be done in the town, what our wish list is, if you will. Dan mentioned new fire station. As an example, if that's something that's deemed to be of overriding importance, then you want to try to build that somehow into your budget. So you look at the needs of the town, you look at the needs of the people, and the select board, along with the town manager and along with the budget committee, comes up with what they feel is a recommended budget to put before the town that meets all those needs and is still as conservative as possible. Belgrade is not a high spending town. We're very conservative generally. So much so that every time something comes up that's a little out of the ordinary, people think that we're going overboard. We tend to think that it's what we propose is stuff that's necessary. We want to service the people and keep the budget as conservative as possible. So I don't know if that's answering the question, Jay.
Well, I guess what would be your, if you had to take a look and say, you know, we often talk about needs and wants, you know, and we have plenty of both. What areas do you think are the top 2 or 3 or 4 needs of the community?
Well, other than things like the salt water contamination, which is, I wish it wasn't a need, but we're going to have to address. So that'll become a need of the town. We don't know at this point how that's going to go. Improving the fire protection via a new centralized station, one of the needs of the town. Keeping we don't have a lot of control over the school budget, but doing what we can to keep the quality of education high is a need of the town. I don't know. I can't think of anything else right now.
That's fair.
Dan,
Dan,
read me my list, will you?
read you your list?
My
What you just told me?
My response. No, my response in the newsletter.
Oh, no, that's old news. This is new news. So, Dan, same question to you. You know, the budget process. I know you're familiar with the budget process, and Michael nicely described it. But you know, as a select person, that's the first stop in terms of what goes forward. We're working with the budget committee, obviously, but what are your priorities? Where do you think the town should be really zeroing in when it looks at spending our limited dollars?
Well, like I mentioned before, I think this coming year is going to be the salt contamination. I mean, we've got to deal with that, because the longer we push that out, the worse it's going to get, the more expensive it's going to get. Going from there, I had mentioned the fire station. That can be pushed back a little bit if it need be, but the reason that needs to be done is because they keep changing the Bureau of Labor Standards laws. You know, so there's certain requirements you have to have in these fire stations, and it's getting harder and harder to meet a lot of these requirements. And you start paying fines, that starts adding up too, so you're just throwing dollars away. The other thing we're going to have to continue to do is keep after the water quality in the town. You know, we've been spending money every year, appropriating it for the milfoil removal. We've got to find a way to get the other towns and the surrounding towns, and even more the residents, and possibly the summer residents, maybe they can work out some donations and stuff. If the town, I think, is about at its limit from the taxpayers as to what they can put into this water quality every year, the milfoil remediation. But I think we've got to find other ways to start funding that, because if the quality of the water goes down, the property values go down, and you have less and less people buying. I think you're going to find this year in this area. I was talking to somebody the other day that does a lot of camp openings, and you're going to find that many camps are changing hands this year. From what I understand, it's many people from Massachusetts, and they're trying to get away from the COVID virus. So one person I talked to has about 20 people that he deals with. It's had close to 20 camps change hands. So I think we're going to end up, you know, when you start talking to all these different guys that work on these camps and do the openings and closings, there's going to be a lot of them that are changing hands this year. So I think water quality is going to be a big impact.
For the benefit of those who may not be aware, the salt issue that we've touched upon a couple times, and Anthony and others can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is there's a section of town which is primarily the triangle around the post office up to Cemetery Street and over, which includes the new town office, that has a serious problem with salt contamination. That's what you're talking about, and dealing with the residences that are there whose wells are being adversely affected by this. That's accurate. Thank you. I see Sarah Langette has joined us. You need to unmute yourself, Sarah, if you would. We'll say, oh, there we go.
Hi.
Hi there.
How you doing?
We're doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just have some technical problems over here.
Audio. We got a little bit of a problem with the audio. You're breaking up a bit. Oh, hi there. No. Could you try sitting a little, maybe closer to the microphone?
What is it here?
Let's try it. So, Sarah, what we did was the folks that are also running for elected office just took a minute or two just to talk a little bit about who they are and why they're interested in running for their positions, and offer you the same opportunity. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're interested in serving on the school board.
Yeah, I've been a resident of Belgrade for over 20 plus years. I have 2 children that went to a school district, and through the time that they joined the middle school all the way to the senior year, I was very involved with them in school, meeting the teachers, learning their needs and their mindset within the school district, and what are their goals and visions for the community. And my background is technical and science and engineering and business as well. And I think I have some skills that I can offer to the district in helping in the decision process and making a good community here.
Great. Thanks. Having a real hard time hearing. It sounds like the audio is breaking up a lot. I got the gist. I got the gist of it, but.
Just 1 second, Jay. Let me try something different here.
Okay. While you're doing that, Sarah, we'll come back to you. Jason, I wanted to go to you to ask you the same question that we asked the others about the challenges that you see in town. You talked about the buildup of winter sand on the shoulders, and talk to us about the needs of the roads and the priorities that you see if you're successful in being the road commissioner.
Yeah, so you got to clean up the edges of the road every year because we put down a lot of winter sand, so the water doesn't channel along the edge of the hot top and erode the hot top, and clean the culverts and all that stuff, and just make sure the trees are all trimmed back, and make sure the culverts are in good working shape.
Yeah, and it sounds like from what Dan was saying, you might be busy on the West Road after this after this goes by.
It's kind of difficult right now because Morris is still really in charge, so I don't hear much. Yeah. So, but anyways.
Yeah. Where do you see the real problem areas? Are there some parts of town that you think really need to be the center of attention for the next year, 2, 3?
Like Hewlin Street out there in the village is pretty bad. Over by the school, the Depot Road has got some bad, the road sunk a lot and it's getting some bad areas. And typically, like he said, there's some washouts on the West Road. I mean, of course, that needs to be taken care of. And I don't know, there's plenty out there. I mean, I think the Guptill Road's got some pretty bad spots in the pavement going up the hill. I'm sure there's plenty of things to do out there. So
there's no luck. Sarah, can we try it again with your audio? You're muted.
How about that?
Oh my goodness. Yay. Well, thank you for your persistence. I guess one of the big we talked earlier about the challenges that COVID has presented to us, and I know you're not on the board, but just one of the big issues in today's news was education and how education has been affected by that. You're looking for your thoughts and the type of things that would be of interest to you as the school considers what to do going forward. Nothing, I thought I'd give you. I'll just give you an easy question. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's going to be a real tough challenge. It's not like we have a book to figure it out all together, or that we had gone through this before. But we are not the only community putting heads to figure this out. And as we move forward, we're trying to hear what others are doing. Right now, I have not heard from the district, nor have reached out to figure out any of such yet. I've been busy with other things, but for instance, I've been putting a lot of thought in getting 2 university kids from the house out and see how that's going to work for their universities, and at least at a postgraduate level, what they're doing is they will run the semester. This is in this corner of the United States, in the northeast corner. They be running the school, the college session starting early in August, as early as they can in August, and then sending the kids out for Thanksgiving, and they're not going back. They're just staying from Thanksgiving break all the way through January break. They're staying home and finishing finals from the house, which makes sense because the flu season and COVID would really be strong during that time. So in the northeast corner of the United States, it seems that a lot of schools are planning to go back, not go online. I know there's going to be a lot of different districts have been just voicing out is going to be very expensive. But in my terms, I have not, I'm not officially elected yet, and so I have not tried to push or dig out for information into it yet. But certainly there's going to be more costs. There are going to be challenges, because this is like preparing a delivery where it's going to be a C-section or it's going to be natural, and you are preparing for both. And it's going to be certain challenges, certainly financially. Now, and then the other portion, weighing the quality of education altogether, because we were able to complete a second semester for everybody, 4 months of schooling, and certainly things were done, but the weight and the quality of the education certainly would be in person. So the force and the strive, I think, for most everybody that I hear in this northeast corner of the U.S. is to strive to attend school from 3 to 4 months, and everybody's weighing out how they're going to do it and how expensive it's going to be, and certainly the expense is going to be more, no doubt about that. So what alternative we have to raise money for that is, I think going to have to pull into the experience of the teachers, as they already went through this first round in 4 months, and ask them what kind of things they can do to help minimize the cost altogether. So there are going to be a lot of talks that need to happen into that. Just right now, in the middle of we're in the middle of summer, and people have been dying to get out. We are most of us, we're trying to take advantage of that. And I think coming up within, by the time July start winding down a little bit, I think there's going to have to be a lot of conversation about that.
Thank you. Well, let me just open it up to see, Anthony, if there are any questions on Facebook, or if any of the folks that are with us on Zoom have any questions that they would like to ask.
Jay, no questions on Facebook at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me just, I'll try to do a little bit softer question then. How are we going to deal with education in light of COVID-19? That was probably a little unfair. But I guess I'm interested in communications, and what's helpful for you? I mean, as Dan and Mike, you've both been in the position that you're seeking again. What's helpful for you as a select person in terms of connecting with people? I guess what I'm looking for is, are you an email person? Are you a telephone person? I mean, what type of input helps you in your decision-making process? And I'll start with Dan, because he's in the upper right corner of my screen right now.
I mean, I don't really have a preference. I mean, when I was on the select board, if people came in and wanted to speak in front of the board, I'll listen to what anybody has to say. I try to keep my feelings out of it most of the time, because no matter who's elected, you're supposed to represent the whole town. So you've got to try to look at what the majority of the town wants. There were a few times, and I couldn't even tell you which specifically at this point what they were, but there were a few times that were things that were proposed that personally I was against, that when it came right down to it, I voted the opposite way, because overall it was probably good for the town. It may not have been great for me, but it was probably better for the town. So as far as somebody communicating, I mean, I don't have a problem with email or in person or phone calls or anything else. And if you can convince me that you're always right and it's the best thing for the town, then I'm more than happy to listen to you and put it forward.
I'll never even try to convince you that I'm always right. So, but Michael, tell me about how do you? I asked this question partially because I was a selectman back in the mid '90s, and I really found it challenging that on most of the issues that the board deals with, there's very little, if any, input that comes out. The people will certainly tell you when there's a hot topic, and then there's no doubt about that. But the hot topics, while they get a lot of publicity, in my experience, are the fewer and farther between. There's the regular business that has to be done, and a lot of times the regular business seems like it's done in the absence of input from the community. So that's why I'm sort of framing the question like that, in terms of what helps you as you're going through that mundane business type, the day-to-day business of being on the board of select persons.
Well, my preference has actually been hindered somewhat because of COVID, in that I prefer of all the different ways of dealing with people, talking to people, I prefer face-to-face more than any other. I mean, you have to utilize email these days, you have to utilize texting, you have to utilize the computer, but I don't find any of them preferable. If I can't meet face-to-face, I like to use the telephone, which is definitely puts me in the early part of the 20th century, I guess. But you meet face-to-face with people, you learn a lot more, and you have a better feeling for what they've got in their mind, what they're saying. So that's one of the reasons I prefer it. As far as having people getting involved, we have hearings all the time, and nobody comes. We've had a series. We're going to have the third of a series of 3 hearings on the budget coming up this Friday. The ones up till now, we haven't had many people, if any, come. They may sit there and listen, but they don't contribute much, which is fine if they have nothing to contribute. I'm not saying they need to speak up and argue, but it's difficult to get people involved. One of the reasons that I'm really sorry we can't have a traditional town meeting this year is because that's when you do hear from people, and they'll express their opinions on various topics. I hope we don't have to do this for the regular town meeting too much in the future. But that's really kind of the way I feel about it. I can use the computer. I hate the computer. Like I say, I'm probably in mid 19th century somewhere. I miss 1960 because we didn't have all this stuff that makes our life easier, supposedly. Although, given the current pandemic, we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now if it wasn't for the technology. So on that score, I can't complain about it.
Great decade of music too.
Hoot Canute.
Jason, road commissioner works pretty independently, obviously working with the board of selectmen and the town manager. But what types of input do you think helps a road commissioner in doing their job?
Definitely phone calls is the best way, or face-to-face. My email, I don't check it regularly, maybe every other day, or maybe sometimes twice a week if I'm busy. So that's not really the fastest way to get a hold of me, but either texting or calling or something in that nature is going to be the best.
Yeah. Anthony.
We have a question that has been posed in our chat, Jay, and it's both for Jason and for the board candidates. And the question is, what mix of sand/salt/plowing do you recommend for winter roads?
I guess I'm kind of confused on the question.
So I think, Jason, the question is, obviously there's a certain mix of sand to salt that we use on the roads in the wintertime.
Right. Yeah.
And so in your mind, what's the optimal mix?
I'm not exactly sure what the mix is right now. Probably like 3 to 1, I'm guessing. I don't really know. That's kind of what the Warren boys and my father they deal with it more than I do, to tell you the truth. I mean, they're putting it down on the roads. They know what works better than what I know what works good. I mean, they're the ones using the product and using it. So I think that question would be more directed to them, guys that are actually doing the work.
Is that something that's set by the town individually, or is there guidance that comes from the state with regard to the mixture? Mike?
Yeah, the state, I've taken a couple of, way back when, my first term, a couple of the state training courses on just this topic. And they set recommendations. However, the town is free to adjust that. My personal opinion is that we use too much sand, and I think Jason's experience with the sand building up on the side of the road is kind of backs that up. We use salt. We use a lot of salt too. I'm not in a position to say it's too much or too little. Some places, like the hill at the Four Corners, Castle Island and West Road, you need to use salt because it's a dangerous intersection anyway. So I don't know what the proportion is right now. I don't know whether Mr. Stevens and the contractors have changed it or set it. I'm sure they do what they think is best, but that's just my gut feeling. I'm done.
Dan, any comments from you about that?
I don't know what the mixture is. I mean, it's usually they've gone by the state guidance a lot of the times, but we've had this debate for years and years and years. We've gone from salt priority to non-salt priority, which we were going to use the spray at one time to, the calcium type spray. There's not a lot of good answers. I think we over salt and sand quite often on a lot of the roads. The hills need to be done, but I think when you get into the flats and some of the areas, all you do by having a bare road is have people go a lot faster in the winter. And when it freezes over, they get into trouble just from the amount of accident calls we've had to go to. So I guess as far as mixture, I couldn't really tell you. And then one other thing before we move on, I think when Mike was talking about the public hearing, I think he said it was Friday. I believe it's Thursday.
It is.
Did I say, I'm sorry?
Thursday the 9th at noon.
Yeah, I just didn't want people to try to tune in on Friday.
Yeah.
I was hoping.
Anthony.
We have a question off of Facebook, and the question is, how does the select board lead the community to meet the challenges of climate change?
Now, repeat the question.
The question is, how does the select board lead the community to meet the challenges of climate change?
Another easy question.
Yeah. Seems to me I said I wasn't going to answer. Didn't want to get involved with those big picture questions because it's really, I don't know how much we can do short of trying to utilize as small amount of fuel as we can, try to keep our footprint as small as we can. Perhaps we should be encouraging projects like the solar farm. I'd like to be able to say that we led them to here, but we didn't. So I don't know. It's a tough question. I don't know how much we can do, to be honest.
Dan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think as they were discussing last night, they were talking about the solar farm coming in and the fact that we don't have any ordinances basically regulating solar or wind. I think the select board has to sit down and come up with policies to cover all of those, to try to put them forward to the town voters, because solar and wind are great, as far as environmental things, but then at some point, the mechanical parts of these outlive their usefulness, and you have to make sure where this stuff's going, that it's not just going in a pile somewhere. So you can have good points, with the solar and wind that help the environment, but then you turn around on the back end and destroy the environment. So it's going to be a matter of the select board sitting around, coming in and changing with the times and doing the research and coming up with policies that are consistent with recycling and things like that. We do have a good recycling policy with the town, even though some of the monies we're receiving from recycling has gone down considerably lately. Obviously, we're not shipping as much stuff to China right now. You know, the recycling center was basically the town's first big thing on environmental, you know, to try to get some of the waste out of the stream. The other part is also the salt and sand. The more salt and sand you put down, the more contamination you put into the ground, and the more salt contamination you have. So it's a matter of trying to juggle public safety versus, you know, sanding the roads.
You know,
I remember our moderator, when Clyde Bickford was moderator, I remember him at one of our town meetings talking about, you pay to put it down, you pay to pick it up, and then you pay when it contaminates the wells. And at that point, we hadn't seen the number of contaminated wells that we're currently dealing with. So he was certainly spot on there. Mike.
You know, unfortunately, a lot of the so-called solutions we come up with, as Dan alluded to, cause a problem in the rear end of the back end of the project. Hybrid cars is an example. People are hot to get them because you use less fuel. They feel you're, you know, creating less of a footprint. But on the other hand, when the battery wears out, you got to get rid of it, and that they cause a lot of problems. They can't just take them to the transfer station and dump them. So I don't know what kind of progress has been made on that score, but we have a lot of hybrid cars out there, and that's an example of something, you know, something that can be a problem later on. I'm thinking of buying a hybrid car, so I shouldn't say too much, but
There you go. Sarah, I wanted to go back to you. We had the question about communication and connection with the constituents. What type of information helps you as you see yourself going about the responsibilities of a school board member?
Let's see, there we go. I work well through email. I enjoy face-to-face conversations as well. I think actually, as the other candidates have forward, I think face-to-face communication is the best way of getting things done. Certainly, this COVID session is going to pose challenges for that. And I'm rolling in to understand and master the etiquettes of Zooming and doing video chat. So in terms of communications for me, email works great. Texting works great. The getting resources through posts that are done in the website. Like I got a lot of information and understanding of things that have been done in the district through the archives. So all the minutes that have been done and placed in there, I've been off and on, you know, going through them and getting to understand how the mindset within the towns on how to go about things, and get to understand that and understand the goals and perceptions of people before me, so to speak, and how that things were done before. So in terms of information resources, that's what have been helping me. And moving forward, I think that we should keep those available to the public, and keeping communications open like that, like the board meetings are open to the public as well. So.
Great. Thank you. Like I said, put it back out there. Gina, Steve, Melanie, there's a few people on here that Gary joined us. Any other questions that you'd like to present to any of the candidates? If not, I'll just again remind people that there is a hearing, the final hearing on the town meeting warrant, which is, what is it, like 50 articles? There's it's a lengthy ballot because we're not doing it on the floor of the center as we would have otherwise done. That's going to be Thursday, tomorrow at noon. It's online, and the information for connecting is also on the town's website. I'll put out go on a side trail there that I think the town's website, the overhaul of the website is wonderful. I think the information that's there is great. It's up to date, and I personally appreciate you have the ability to sign up to be push notified when there's new information. And so if you're not taking advantage of that and it's of interest, go to the website. You can figure out how to do that. It'll just magically appear in your mailbox. I don't know, every few days it seems like I get something new. The election itself is next Tuesday, the 14th. It's going to be a busy day. If you have the opportunity and are interested in getting an absentee ballot, that's a great way to do it because it's several pages. In addition to the town meeting articles, there's also the primaries, the state primaries, as well as the school budget vote. So it's a busy and very important day of balloting. So that's next Tuesday. You can get the ballots at the town office. You can turn them in at the town office, or you can turn them in at the center. It can be contactless. Anthony, what's the deadline for folks requesting an absentee ballot?
Yeah, I was just going to weigh in. Obviously, with the situation that we're faced with now, the state government has made it so that you can request you can receive an absentee ballot even on the day of the election. So there will be no sort of deadline for getting an absentee ballot other than 8 p.m. on Tuesday, the 14th, when the polls close. And so people can either vote down at the center on the 14th, or they can vote at the town office. And they can also drop off their ballots in our drop box, which is on the north side of the town office. And Gina gave me a great idea a little earlier. I'm going to take a picture of that and maybe do a little live video just to show people where it's located at the town office so that they can easily locate it. So, but if you have questions, please call us at the town office. We're happy to answer those for you.
What about the deadline for requesting a mail ballot? Is there?
Well, we are still receiving those requests, but we're highly encouraging people to come to the town office to pick them up because at this late date, there's no guarantee they will receive that ballot in the mail before the 14th.
Right. Mike?
I have but one question. Who decided Bastille Day was a good day for the election? Come on, you've been asking questions. Now I'm asking one. Answer me.
Who are you asking the question of?
You.
You're asking me.
Fuzzface.
My ancestors are from the UK, so I cannot help you with that. I'm sorry. We're on the other side of the English Channel.
All right.
Thanks.
To let you off the hook.
Well, I again want to put it out. I've monopolized a lot of the questions, but I certainly want to give anybody that's joining us either on Facebook or via Zoom the opportunity to ask a question. But this is like this is it. Ask now or ask later, I guess. Any final questions? Gina, final comments from you or on behalf of the Communications Committee or anything?
I just want to say how happy I am that we could do this on Zoom. And I know this isn't like the preferred method of a lot of people, but I do want to comment that we have had a lot of participation at town events because of Zoom. And I'm hoping that once things get back to normal, that maybe we can continue to have a format like this still available to people. And I just wonder how our candidates feel about that. You know, would that be a good investment for the town to make something like this available? I know we have done the microphones and the audio, and it's been of limited quality. So I think a lot of people haven't listened in, but the Zoom quality seems really good. And, you know, from the communication standpoint, we just really want people to be involved in the town and to learn about the town and to share their ideas. And so to do that, they really have to be listening in and participating.
Thanks.
So Jay, I do want to note that Sarah has her hand
I was,
raised.
I was just going to call on Sarah because she nicely raised her hand. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Sarah.
You guys can tell I don't do Zoom often, I guess. You guys are you guys are ahead on this on me. Just out of curiosity, how much was the quorum tonight? I see that there was 11 participants in Zoom.
And we had some that joined us. It's also being simultaneously broadcast on Facebook. And Anthony, how many folks did we have joining us there? Okay, I can't unmute.
We had upward of about 20 people watching on Facebook.
Wow. Nice.
Excellent. Excellent. Great.
I want to say our last candidate forum we had, I think maybe we had 8 or 10 people attend at the library. So the turnout was much bigger tonight.
The last one though, we had brownies, we had chocolate chip cookies, we had lemonade. I'm not looking at, I have a water bottle here. This is all I'm getting today. But Michael, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I just, in answer to Gina's comment, and despite my comments about being anti-technology oriented, I do like Zoom. This has been great, and we get great participation, much more than some of the live meetings. However, things like the public meetings, select board meetings, committee meetings, the only reason we can do that on Zoom right now is because of the executive order. Normally, they have to be done in person. So I don't know if we'll be able to continue them or not. Maybe we could simulcast them or something, but I don't know.
Well, maybe this is a topic for the communications committee to take up, Gina, as to how we might be able to make a valuable use of Zoom post-pandemic.
As long as you're legal.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I would be all in favor of having a camera, a good quality camera, and then that you could pan and have the whole select board and broadcast it at the same time. And that way, Anthony or somebody could have the computer, and if somebody had a question, they could type it in and then just broadcast the board meetings just like they record them. Used to do stuff live, or had the ability to do stuff live. Originally put it on the public cable television. It would be nice to be able to do the Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem broadcasting meetings. It's the actually running the meeting the way we're doing this tonight. This would not be subject to the state law, this particular forum, but the select board meetings would be, and the committee meetings would be. So I don't know the answer whether we can have a two-way conversation in the way that Dan suggests. Is something we could certainly look into.
Well, I think those are the types of things that I suspect, there's 400 communities around the state that are also going through this as well. And if it requires a legislative change, I think that's something that we could consider putting for, encouraging our state representatives.
We know a legislator.
Yeah,
Have you ever dealt with the legislature?
Very much. Very much. I will also tell you that I worked in an office where we actually had legislation that allowed us to use technology for business meetings, and we had that back in the days when dial-up television was a very expensive and inefficient way to go. So I think that I agree with Gina's comment and the other comments that I think this certainly has its drawbacks. But when you look at the selectmen's meetings, and you've had more people attend select persons meetings remotely than I ever saw in that room. And I think having people understand what's going on in our community is always a good thing. So, I read a book on advertising. So you got to send a message 7 times, 7 ways to have it be effective. And, one of those ways may be Zoom and Facebook and things like that going forward. So, well, we've been going on.
One more thing. Can I say,
yes,
say
please,
one more thing?
Please, you can have the final word, Gina.
Oh, I don't want the final word necessarily, but I did just want to say that this also feels really good in terms of like a community conversation, which is something we don't get to do very often. Usually there are board meetings that there's agendas that we have to follow. And this is sort of more of an open conversation, which, I would like to see as the communications committee. Maybe we could suggest more opportunities to have community conversations. And I just wonder if our public officials would be in favor of that as well. I know it's more time. They put a lot of time in and they may feel like, oh, another thing to do, another evening wrapped up. But I don't think we have a lot of opportunities for just people conversing. And I think the more we did it, the more people would participate and ask questions.
Is that a question for us or what?
It was.
No, just if you want to comment.
Well, as I said before, as long as it's done legally, I mean, we're under a lot of restraints. You know, if there are, a meeting like this is not a problem because this is an informal meeting. We're not really making decisions on town business. If it's a meeting where decisions are made, then we have to follow. Number one, we have to be careful about a quorum. We couldn't have a meeting to discuss town business with, if we had a meeting and we were discussing town business and there were 3 of us here, it would be an official meeting. So we'd have to put notices out. There are a lot of requirements like that we'd have to figure out how to overcome. But I like the idea of people getting together and talk. That's one of the things I like about the Zoom meetings is I participate in Zoom meetings in a lot of the organizations I'm in, and you do have the opportunity to talk things out. And it's also nice in the wintertime, not having to drive home in the snow. So, which frankly, that keeps a lot of people away from town meetings.
Yeah, what I was taking away from Gina's comment was not so much the formal select persons meeting, because that's very well structured, but to have an opportunity for just a community forum, you know, a little bit more free flowing than you're able to do. That's something, I think that's something worth talking about.
Something like this meeting would be good for when they do the summer residents meeting.
Yeah.
You could get more summer residents to participate because you're not really making decisions. They're discussing airing what their concerns are or things they'd like to see, and it's a way to gather information.
And it'd be an opportunity for summer residents to join us in the fall or winter too, so they can keep up with what's going on in town. Anthony.
So Jay, maybe we can let this citizen be the final word. Someone on our Facebook page commented, "It's been nice to sit here at home and listen to you all. I have to say I learned a few new needs of the town. Thank you."
Excellent. I think that's a wonderful way to close.
Great.
Thank you all. I appreciate your taking the time to join us, and remember to vote early and vote often.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.